So, proxy wars between the United States and the Soviet Union aren't just going to end in Cuba. Now, we're going to come to actual fighting in Vietnam. So, America getting involved in the Vietnam War is an extension of the containment of communism policy. So, let's back up to how Vietnam became communist in the first place. Again, this is another instance of Japan having control in the region, and then they're plucked out of it by World War II and losing it. So communist influence begins to seep into North Vietnam, and the North Vietnamese troops, who become known as the Viet Cong, their stronghold is in Hanoi in the north. Now, the South is going to be a leader backed by America. Right? He wants democracy down there. He's based out of Saigon, so it's going to become North Vietnam versus South Vietnam, much like the two Koreas were fighting each other. Communist up north, anti-communist down south, backed by communist regimes in the north, backed by the United States in the south. Remember, America's trying to prevent communism where it is. So the Vietnam War gets started in the 60s. Now, Kennedy is still president at this time, and who you see him here with his president, Lyndon Johnson. So in 1963, Kennedy is looking to kind of up the war effort. But if we're students of history, we know that in 1963, as they're building up the war in Vietnam, Kennedy's going to get assassinated in Dallas in an unrelated to the war event. Now, this kind of shook America to its core. Kennedy had been the attractive young new president, and now we're left with grouchy old man Lyndon B. Johnson. Well, Lyndon B. Johnson is going to intensify pressure in Vietnam. So, as the fighting built up, America is going to become more and more aggressive in Vietnam. Vietnam is a lot of jungle fighting, and this was a really brutal war for lots of reasons. So Johnson starts off with a few thousand. His ultimate goal is to get over 100,000 troops in Vietnam. Now, this is by the mid 1960s that he's looking to do this. So, while the jungle combat's particularly brutal and nasty, we're not trying to chase communism where it goes. So America's going to fight something called a limited war. We're not going to fight outside Vietnam. So communists in the government are going to take advantage of that and run into Laos, Cambodia. We're not going to follow them. Now, what you see here is an image that's going to be splashed across a lot of television screens. This is an example of a college protest. So America becomes very divided over this war. Congress never formally declared that we were fighting Vietnam. All right. America was fighting communism, and you can't declare a war unless you have a solid enemy. During World War II, it was Japan, it was Germany, it was Italy. This is just fighting communism. So while the United States government wanted to contain communism, we couldn't technically declare a war on it. So Americans became very confused about why we were fighting kind of an unknown enemy. So in the beginning of the war, people were like, yeah, sure, let's go fight communism where it is. But like I said, the war in Vietnam's nasty, it's brutal, it's lots of jungle fighting. American soldiers had to go in tunnels underground. They were killed by booby traps, by disease. American troops were dropping napalm to clear out jungles. And most of the casualties of the war are going to be civilians. All right, there's an infamous incident called the My Lai Massacre, where American Marines roll up into a village. They don't really find any communist-backed Vietnamese troops, but what they do find are women and children, and they proceed to dynamite the huts and burn down things. And hundreds of innocents are going to die. So people back home are particularly upset because they're watching this happen on TV. Like, they know what's happening in Vietnam. They don't know why we're fighting it. And all they're seeing is a bunch of American troops doing heinous things. So there becomes a mass protest movement against the Vietnam War. This war starts losing popular support pretty quickly. Now, college campuses in particular, where people go to sit and think about stuff, are going to become hotbeds for protests. Now, the picture you see on this slide is part of the aftermath of something called the Kent State Massacre. At Kent State in Ohio, like on the college campus, protesters were protesting the Vietnam War. National Guard troops got called in. Now, these guys were being peaceful about it. Okay? But the National Guard troops, someone got an itchy trigger finger, shot into the crowd, and what you see here is a young person on the ground dead. Now, word of this got out, and then America became more and more opposed to the war in Vietnam, because now it looks like our government itself is trying to quash any kind of sentiment against it.